Hello Internet, it is I, your favorite drag queen turned DM, Shelly Von Miller here, to talk about the basics of how to create a character in D&D. That's right, if you came from my basics on D&D and what exactly is a TTRPG, welcome to the next step in your wonderful adventure into the world of role-playing at a table full of your friends. Or strangers, depending on how you start playing. Basically, we're going to be talking about what the classes and races and all the other things you need to build a character, and hopefully it's informative. Let's start off with the fact that I am not sponsored by Wizards of the Coast, D&D, or any of their entities because, well, I'm just a small creator, and I'm just here to divvy up some knowledge. So let's get into it. So what are you going to need to get started? Well, you'll need two things of dice. You'll need a D6, which is a 6-sided dice, and a D20, a 20-sided dice. You'll also need the player's handbook. Basically, this has all the basic rules you'll need, as well as how to build a character, some of the feats involved, backgrounds, starting equipment, and how to get started in an adventure. Now, you don't need this in person, but, there's websites like DNDBeyond and Roll20 where you can set up an account for free and get some of the books. It's still going to cost you, but, however you want to learn, we're going to learn together. So let's get started with character creation. If you're wanting to do this with pen and paper, there is a character sheet in the back of the player's handbook that's really handy. It's a one-time use though, so make sure you make some copies for future characters. Trust me, once you make one, you'll make a lot. For me, I'm going to be using D&D Beyond. Again, not sponsored, but I just like how everything is just clean and easy to set up, and it's very newbie friendly. Whenever I created my first character, Lashana, honestly, this was the website that I went to. It's free to use with the basic standard, but if you're wanting to upgrade and do more characters or even share content with other people, throw a few dollars. I think it's about $5.99 US plus tax. It just depends on what your budget is. So here we have the D&D Beyond website. Again, it looks really nice, really clean. You have your collections, which you have characters, campaigns, other things, homebrew, which, that's a later video. Game rules, which means you can get into the nitty-gritty of each class and each of the spells and races and monsters and feats and everything that comes with the player handbook and some of the other sources that you can buy. Sources, so featured source books and featured adventures, which have their own special lore and items that come with it. And then you have your tools like the character builder and counter builder, and then the marketplace where you can buy books. Honestly, I like having digital books. It's much easier, though I do have the player handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual in my hand because I just like to have it in reference. That way I'm not clicking around whenever I'm hosting campaigns. So let's get into characters. Create a character. Simple enough. There's a button for it. So you can do a quick build, which it goes with like the recommended options for a first level character. You can do a random character, but we're going to do the standard character build. And if you're a beginner, they even have the show help text option. So let's use that. Usually I don't do that, but let's use it today. Maybe it'll help you. Alright, so creating a character, it goes through what it means, character level, and preferences. And then you can create your character name. They have some suggestions, or you can go to a name generator, like the fantasy name generator. I like that one, but let's see. I kind of like that name. Let's go with Dovul. You don't have to have a last name if you don't want to. It's all up to you. Now there's sources. It will usually come with the player's handbook and the monster manual already in there, but you can add more sources. Dragonlance, non-core D&D, Rick and Morty D&D, Critical Role D&D's content. It all depends on what you're comfortable with. Let's turn them all on and see what we get. You can enable dice rolling if your DM is going to do digital dice rolling. If not, you can just roll it by hand. It's all up to what's going on at your table. Now we're going to get into some optional features. I always have them turned off, that way it doesn't confuse a lot of people. It can get a little weighed down, if you catch my drift. Advancement type, again, that is based on your table. I use milestones because it's a little bit easier to track. XP can get a little, people can get a little too happy with XP hunting and thinking that they can hog all the roleplay. It's all up to, again, your DM. I use milestones, so there you go. Hit points. Now, if you do fixed, the programming that deals with D&D Beyond will do your hit points for you, or you can do manual. Manual meaning that you roll your hit points based on what your class is. So a barbarian and a cleric, you're going to use different dice to make hit points. Right now we're going to do fixed. It's just a little bit easier for beginners, that way they don't get too caught up in the weeds. Then feats and multi-class requirements. That's for further on down the line. We're building a first level character, so it's going to be a little bit easier. Show level scaled spells. That's really great for those who are wanting to do a magic user. I, for instance, did a magic user for my first character, but I would suggest if you're wanting to get into really heavy combat, definitely go with a non-magic class unless you know something about magic users that can use swords, like a blade singer wizard or even a paladin who uses their strength and their charisma to kind of get the job done. Encumbrance means what weighs you down. A lot of DMs will make you use encumbrance, but not do coin weight, because it's a little bit easier to not worry about how much gold you have on you. Especially, most DMs will kind of slide you a bag of holding to keep that weight distribution up. Modifiers and ability scores. If you want it on top or you want the scores on top, it just depends on how you want your character sheet set up. And then you can make your character private or public. Public would be better if you have a campaign that's going to be on D&D Beyond, but if you're just making this for yourself, that's okay. Now let's choose your race. Some people use species, some people use background. D&D itself uses the word race. It all depends on how comfortable you are with certain words. In D&D, there are 9 basic races that are included in the player handbook. Whenever you buy other source books, you can unlock other types as well, like owlins or lizard folk. It all depends on what your budget is and what you're wanting to play. There are ability score increases or decreases depending on the race. You can choose your age. Most have like normal human ages, meaning that they age between 0 and like 80 years old, or you can choose one that lasts for a very long time, like elves or gnomes or even dwarves. It depends on what you want to play. And then there's alignment, which there's a whole alignment chart that we can get into, but if you want to play an evil character, make sure it's good with your DM, because sometimes DMs don't want evil characters at their table. then the size really does matter, meaning your height. Some characters are really small and they can maneuver through places without any encumbrance. Maybe you want to be a really big character like a Goliath. It's all what kind of flavor you want. There's also different languages involved, different walking speeds, and then there's also sub-races whenever it comes to certain races in D&D. Maybe you want to be a stout halfling or a pallid elf. It all depends on what you want to do. There's plenty of things to unlock, and trust me, it's pretty fun. So let's choose a race, shall we? So our name is Duval, right? Let's just do basic rules because most people are gonna just have the player's handbook. We have Dragonborn, Dwarf, Elf, Half-Elf, Half-Orc, Halfling, Human, Gnome, and Tiefling. So, what should we choose? Let's see, what have I never played before? I've never played a Dragonborn, which is kind of cool. I have one player that likes to play a lot of Dragonborn, but we were able to coax him out of his comfort zone. So, Dragonborn look very much like dragons standing erect in a humanoid form, though they lack wings and a tail. Now, if you're coming from the world of Critical Role, you know that there are tailless and tailed Dragonborn. It just depends on what kind of world your DM is playing in. If they're playing in the world of just D&D, Dragonborns don't have tails. But they do have a breath weapon and damage resistance, depending on what kind of Dragonborn they are. For instance, black Dragonborn are kind of resistant to acid, or silver are resistant to cold. It just depends on what you want to do. So, let's see. We're going to choose Dragonborn, Draconic Ancestry. Let's just do our little favorite fire, Gold Dragon. Also, depending on what kind of dragon you choose will depend on your alignment. Some are evil aligned, some aren't, but it also means that if you have an evil aligned Dragonborn, maybe they're on an arc of redemption and trying to not be evil like the rest of their family. It all depends on what you want to play. So let's do a gold Dragonborn. They have a breath weapon and they have damage resistance associated with so they're resistant to fire, which is kind of nice. Now we're going to choose our class, meaning we're going to choose what kind of job we want to do in the world of D&D. Now, there are all sorts of classes that you can do. I started my journey in D&D as a cleric, meaning I was a holy person. But you can also be a fighter, a barbarian, a rogue if you want to get a little pickpockety, or if you can act and sing, choose a bard. Who knows? Maybe you can get some singing action into your campaign. There's also a thing called multi-classing, meaning further on down the line you can be a bard and a fighter, or you can be a cleric and a rogue like I was. It all depends on how you want your character to go further in the campaign. Multi-classing is not required though. So let's choose the class, shall we? So we have Artificer, Barbarian, Bard, Blood Hunter, which is a Critical Role class that is now canon, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard. Now, depending on what kind of campaign you're doing, will determine what kind of class you want to do. Also, your DM might, ixnay on the certain class A. Who knows? It's the same with race. Sometimes DMs don't allow certain races in their campaign. It all depends on what kind of world they're building. I'm gonna say we're going to make a paladin. I've never had a paladin before, but I think it'll be kind of fun, right? So, paladins are holy warriors with a sacred oath. That oath you can determine later on down the line. You have a divine sense, meaning you can see where evil is, depending on what situation you're in. Also, you have healing abilities, much like clerics and druids. You can lay your hands on somebody and use your divine sense to heal them. There's also a fighting style that you can adopt in later on in other levels. So we're going to choose the paladin. We're going to just do a level 1, which means that we're just doing the basics. There's hit points. So if you're rolling manually, that means you will use 1d10 per your paladin level for your hit dice, meaning if you get injured in the middle of a session and you want to heal in between scenes, you can do that. It also depends on if your DM allows hit point regeneration. There's also, you can figure out what kind of hit points you have whenever you roll manually, and then you can roll a d10 plus your constitution modifier whenever you go up in levels. Proficiencies, meaning you have the ability to use certain things. So for paladins, you can use all armor, which means you can do light armor, medium armor, or heavy armor. But if you do heavy armor, you are going to have a disadvantage on those stealth rolls. You can also use shields whenever it comes to weapons, meaning, whenever you get into melee, you can use simple and martial weapons. Simple means things like a staff, martial meaning things like a longsword. Tools, unfortunately, you don't have a proficiency in tools, but if you talk to DM and you want to do like a certain flavor with your paladin, like they can sing or something like that, you can add a lute or a flute or something to make musical merriment with. You also have advantage on saving throws. Saving throws means that whenever your character has to go against like a wizard and they have a certain spell that requires you to roll against it, means you have a proficiency in those saving throws. For instance, at my table, whenever I'm a DM, if you have proficiency in something, then you can roll twice and take the larger of the number, meaning you have advantage. That's just at my table. If your DM allows that, that's really cool. But that is just a home rule, as it were, even though we're not playing in my home. Then you can choose 2 skills to be proficient in. Those skills could be athletics, insight, intimidation, medicine, persuasion, and religion. There are different skills involved with playing D&D, and your DM can talk to you more about those skills, and maybe you have a paladin that is really sneaky, so make sure you stay off that heavy armor and take proficiency in stealth later on down the line. It just depends on how you want to flavor your paladin. So we have a Dragonborn Paladin, who is a Gold Dragonborn. I think we're definitely going to need an athletics proficiency. And since he is a Dragonborn, and some people think Dragonborns are intimidating, let's take intimidation. So with a Paladin, with different classes, you're going to have different things on here. Paladin have divine sense, like I said, they can sense evil, and then they have healing abilities starting at first level. Later levels you can get different abilities, different subclasses involved. It just depends on how far you go in your campaign. Now let's talk about ability scores. There are 6 whenever it comes to D&D. strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. They each have their way to balance the scales whenever it comes to gameplay and make sure everyone is on the same level. For instance, if you're wanting to build a paladin like I am right now, you want to have top scores in strength and charisma. Strength meaning you're going to hit harder whenever it comes to melee, and charisma because their spellcasting ability requires them to have charisma really high to have a better chance to kind of beat the bad guy with those spells. There are 3 ways to determine your ability scores. There's standard array, there's point buy, and there's manual rolling. Now, depending on what kind of table you're at is going to determine how you determine those ability scores. I, for instance, use manual rolling and drop the lowest dice. I allow up to 3 rerolls, and yeah, basically you just have to remember what you like out of the 3. Again, it's based on what your DM likes. So for this, we're going to use my rules of manual rolling. So there we go. You can either roll in person or roll on here. It all depends on what you're feeling comfortable. So let's do 3 groups, because I said that we do 3 times. And that's not a bad array if I do say so myself. Let's go into our second group, shall we? Starting off strong. I'm thinking we are going to choose our second, just because there is a little bit tighter understanding of what we can get with those ability scores. So, like I said, for paladins, you want to have a top score in strength and charisma. So we're going to do this as strength and this as charisma, and then we can figure out what our other scores are going to be. Now, if you don't want to be as squishy as some people say, you're going to have a higher constitution, which means one of these 14s is going to be our constitution. If you're wanting to do plate, meaning you want to have heavy armor with our paladin, you might want to up that dexterity to kind of give you a little bit of leeway. Or if you're not really caring how fast you get across a battlefield, you might want to make that your dump stat. I, for one, am going to make sure our wisdom is high because religion is based in wisdom. Our intelligence is good, and then I'm going to dump our dexterity because I'm thinking we'll do some plate. You'll apply your ability scores, and then it will add all that up. So you have your total score strength in 18, close to 20. You can't go over 20. Your ability modifier is going to be +4. Now it's going to tell you how they got there. Your base score was 16, which meant that we rolled that much. Then you have a racial bonus of +2 to your strength, meaning that Dragonborn have a little bit more strength to them. Ability improvements, meaning you can determine based on your class, miscellaneous bonuses, and then maybe you want a set score. And it goes just like this. Now we're going to get into fun stuff, which means we're going to flesh out your character. We're going to choose a background, talk about a backstory, things like that. So it's all up to you and how you want to play your character. So for Duval, we kind of want, like I said, we want to do a plate wearing. So maybe he's a knight. You can also choose a liar, a clan crafter, an outlander, meaning that they explore a lot, a pirate. You can also choose some homebrew stuff, and then there's more backgrounds and more racial traits and more other things to add to your character's lore in other books. I think either soldier or knight is going to work for us. Where is the knight? There we go. Knight of an Order, I think, gives us a little bit of more background. You You belong to an order of knights who have sworn oaths to achieve a certain goal, which is great because as a paladin, you swear an oath. The nature of this goal depends on the order you serve, but in your eyes, it is without question a vital and honorable endeavor. So, whenever it comes to certain backgrounds, you gain more proficiencies. For instance, you have a skill proficiency in persuasion. Let's choose another skill. Since we're a paladin, I think we'll choose religion, just to kind of up our chances to understand what the gods want us to do. Then you can do a tool proficiency. Although a paladin doesn't get tool proficiencies off the bat, with your backgrounds, you kind of get those added on. Let's see. You can choose a musical instrument or a gaming set. Let's do playing cards. Awesome. You get to choose another language because you're part of an order. With Dragonborn, you get Common and Draconic. Let's see, what else would we need? Maybe we're friends with some halflings and we learned halfling along the way. There's also more information on some features you get as a knight, and it will be the same with other backgrounds. And then there are some personality traits that you can choose. You can either roll in person or, go random. I think we'll do some random choices here. So they chose 6. I enjoy being strong and like breaking things, which is great because we have a strength of 18. And then I'm always polite and respectful. As a knight, there's always chivalry involved. Let's go with ideals, which will sometimes determine if you're good or evil or chaotic and neutral. Let's see. Ideal. Responsibility. I do what I must and obey just authority, which means we're lawful. Bonds, meaning maybe we have like an outside bond with somebody or some other order. Number 2, someone saved my life on the battlefield. To this day, I will never leave a friend behind. That means you're loyal to a fault. Maybe you're willing to put yourself at risk if somebody goes down in the battlefield. It helps you determine what kind of flavor you want to put into your role-playing whenever it comes to the role-playing part of the game. And let's choose a flaw. Random. 3. I made a terrible mistake in battle. It cost many lives and I would do anything to keep that mistake secret. Which is great because somebody saved your life in the battlefield. Maybe you went full hard head first into a battle and a lot of people went after you and they saved your life. But unfortunately they died and you don't want to be to blame for that. So you want to keep that secret safe. That's great. Now we can get into alignment, faith, lifestyle. It all depends on what you're wanting to play your character. Some people want to be nobles. Some people want to be just modest people. It just depends on what kind of character you're wanting to play and what your DM is allowing you. Again, if they're not wanting an evil character, then you might not be able to play like a lawful evil or even like a chaotic evil. For instance, we're lawful, so I think we'll stick with lawful good. We're kind of good to a fault. Faith. There's plenty of gods in the world of D&D, and it will just determine on what you want to practice. Maybe you don't have a faith. Maybe you want to get into faith later on down the line. It all depends on what you want to do. Then you have lifestyle. I'm thinking since we're a knight, we're modest whenever it comes to our lifestyle. And so, yeah, it just depends. Then you can get into your physical characteristics, then, of course, your personality traits, and then some organizations, your backstory, your enemies, your allies, everything that makes your character who they are. This is where you'll put it. So let's get into starting equipment. You'll get more equipment later on down the line, depending if you buy it or you find it whenever you're going through a dungeon or somebody's equipment. Paladins, again, have the option of doing a martial weapon and a shield, or 2 martial weapons, meaning you can dual wield some swords. I'm thinking a martial weapon and a shield. I think a Morning Star might be. Then you can choose a simple melee weapon or 5 javelins. With our strength, the javelins might come in handy, but let's do another weapon and choose a hand axe. I think that might be good. Then, depending on what kind of flavor you want to add to your character, you can do a priest pack if you're a more religious type of paladin, or an explorer's pack if you're kind of always on the go whenever it comes to your character. I'm thinking an explorer's pack might work, and it will tell you what comes in the explorer's pack. Chainmail and a holy symbol are required, and then you can choose what kind of holy symbol you have. I'm thinking an amulet will work really nice with our stuff. Then you get 1 set of traveler's clothes as a Knight of the Order, and then you can let's do a signet ring that will represent your place in the order. And then you also start with 10 gold. Add starting equipment. Perfect. Now let's get into gold. Let's randomize it. And we start with 80 gold in total. Awesome. Are you looking for more ways to kind of flavor your character or even learn how to roleplay them better? Check out Jenny D's channel. I'm not a friend of hers, I'm just an admirer, and honestly they have some really great videos to kind of make sure you have a fun experience at any table you go to. And hey, that's the whole point of games, right? Having fun. Now here's the moment of truth. This is where you get to see the character sheet in action. Basically, how it's all set up for you. So let's click that view character sheet, shall we? Perfect! Look at that. Our initiative's kind of low, but we also have a low dexterity. Initiative means whenever you get into battle, you determine where your place is at, and you have an armor class, which will go up whenever you add your chainmail. Look at that, already to 16. That was a big jump. And then a shield will also up your armor class, which means you're going to be harder to hit. Let's equip our Morning Star and our hand axe. Perfect. With that, this is our ability scores, our proficiency bonus, which means it will be added to your skills, and then also your walking speed, your current hit points, which can differ depending on if you manually roll your hit points, and then all your proficiencies, your senses, your skills, what kind of actions you can do. It all depends on what you choose whenever it comes to your character. And like I said, D&D Beyond makes it really easy to create a character and kind of play that character. Congratulations, you made a character! I'm so proud of you. Now, let's find a campaign for it. You can find the campaign wherever, but can I suggest one, please? It's called StartPlaying.games. I'm a DM over there, so I'm a little biased whenever it comes to the platform, but depending on your budget, you can find a game suited just for you and your character's needs. Check out the link down below and start playing today. That being said, I'll see you on the internet. Bye!